you should know this, you are not less than someone else, and having ADHD doesn't have to be something that's a challenge. So the key is to understand what your strengths are, what your unique learning needs are, and to be able to feel comfortable where you're like, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it to me? Or this is hard for me. Can you explain it to me again? Or can you help me understand? So when it comes down to it, it's really about awareness, ownership, self-advocacy, and standing tall and being proud of what you have. Some people, unfortunately, in education or even parents, they're told their child has ADHD. They're told their child has autism, and there's a state of bereavement and grief and sadness. And for other people, the doors open and the floodgates open. They're like, oh my God, I'm a good parent. I did the best I can. Let's use this. And now all these answers and opportunities await. It really depends on your outlook and how you perceive things.
A true measure of a society is how well it supports those who need the most help to be heard. In the world of special education, that often means turning parents into warriors and schools into allies. April, what does that mean to you, and how does it relate to your life?
It's a great question, Carlos. It means to me that whoever said that, and I have an idea who, that they understand that people with disabilities, adults and kids, are here and they've always been here and they're part of society, and that it's been so long that we've been marginalized to now be able to come out and be proud and be able to stand tall and say, you know what, I have this and I have more and I'm not less. It resonates with me, and it's what drives me every day to do what I do.
Why does it drive you and resonate with you so much? Because I feel like, I mean, you have your own, started your own business and you're all in on it. I know you, but I've also like looked at your website and researched you. And I know when you're that deep into something, there's some type of connection personally in there. It usually is.
Yeah. I think, for me, it's sort of a bunch of different things, Carlos. When I was 11, it was the first time I stepped foot into a special education school. And I used to volunteer at different places, work with all different kinds of kids. Mm-hmm. And when I stepped foot in the school and I saw kids walking down the hallway with wheelchairs and all different devices, it just felt like home to me. And so it resonated with me because I was like, this is my people. This is who I feel most passionate about. And I don't know if you know the story, but when I was 20, I got in a car accident and I broke my neck. And I was lucky because I wasn't paralyzed. At the same time, I had to wear a brace, and for 6 months, my parents had to take care of me and do everything for me. And it put me in the shoes of other people and how they live every day. And it changed my perspective. Instead of how you look on the outside, it's really how you feel about yourself and how you stand tall when you look in the mirror. So it really drives me in what I do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And before I get into like more about you and what you do for people who don't know, and your education and all that, I wanted, because you mentioned something that kind of sparked this idea in my mind, which was, what is the psyche of what is going on in the brain, and what is the psyche of a person who is dealing with a disability? Like, you were kind of in that situation for a little while and you've been around it a lot. Like, what are some of the things that they go through? Because I know people all over the world, they see people all the time, every day, that have disabilities, but how many people just actually really understand how a person like that is dealing with the day-to-day, right? In comparison to people who can just get up and go and move around and are pretty much quote unquote normal. But what is like the some things that you think people should know about what people like that go through?
I think what they should know is that it's hard to walk and be in those shoes unless you've been through it yourself, or you've been an extreme caregiver. And an extreme caregiver is someone who cares for someone else with a disability, and they have to fight those battles every day and almost forget themselves in order to give access and equity to other people with disabilities. So for example, we walk and we talk and we navigate through our environment and walk around.
Yeah.
For people with a visible disability, to do that is such a different experience. So when they don't have that barrier, whether it's crossing the street or being able to talk and speak, it's like, wow, that's amazing. So just like in your situation, right, when you were incarcerated, when you got out, it was like, oh my God, but everyone else around you had already experienced that. So sometimes you have to be in those shoes to experience it. But there's also all these invisible disabilities out there, right? ADHD, having dyslexia, where people are like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you? You can't, you won't. They don't see because they don't live that experience, and they don't sit in the classroom and try their hardest when the teachers just have no idea what you're really going through with your brain.
Yeah, because I know like ADHD now, it's a lot more okay to talk about, and people are identifying themselves like, I have ADHD and stuff. But back in the day, I'm pretty sure it was like the ADHD kids were in school, and teachers were like, man, you're telling them all kind of bad things because they can't pay attention, or they're like, that affected them in the classroom. And then the teacher affected them mentally through life, saying they couldn't be something or do anything. For ADHD, explain a little bit about what that is for people who may not know, because we have young people that listen to this podcast, and maybe one of the young people has it, some of the symptoms of ADHD, and maybe like a message for a kid out there who may think he has it, a positive message of like how that can actually be something to help you to become successful in whatever you want to do in life. So
yeah, those are great questions. So with regards to ADHD, first of all, with students with special education, or what's called an IEP, in school, it is about 30 to 40% of all kids. So in everyday life, let's say in school for kids ages 3 to 17, that's about 20%. So if you amplify that and you think about school in general, adults in general, that's about 20% of the population has ADHD. So ADHD is very common for people that have dyslexia, for people that have autism. It goes hand in hand. The symptoms, if you think about it, it looks different for different genders. It's just the way it is. So for girls, it's being, oh, well, she's just so emotional. Well, she's just always on edge, and she's always trying to, think about herself and that kind of stuff. And with boys, people either tend to think, well, that student is hyperactive, they must have ADHD, or they're just not trying, they're not listening. When in reality, inside the brain, if you have ADHD, your brain is thinking about everything, everywhere, all at once.
yeah.
And that can be an asset for some things, Carlos, like multitasking, sales, cooking, just amazing things. You should know this, that you are not less than someone else. And having ADHD doesn't have to be something that's a challenge. So the key is to understand what your strengths are, what your unique learning needs are, and to be able to feel comfortable where you're like, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it to me? Or this is hard for me. Can you explain it to me again? Or can you help me understand? So when it comes down to it, it's really about awareness, ownership, self-advocacy, and standing tall and being proud of what you have. Because some people, unfortunately, in education, or even parents, they're told their child has ADHD. They're told their child has autism. And there's a state of bereavement and grief and sadness. And for other people, the doors open and the floodgates open. They're like, oh my God, I'm a good parent. I did the best I can. Let's use this. And now all these answers and opportunities await. So it really depends on your outlook and how you perceive things.
What are some ways that kids with ADHD can, well, and just kids in general, can discover their strengths, like their unique strengths within themselves?
That's a great question. When I was a school psychologist, we would give IQ tests and processing tests. And so I would see those tests and I would be able to see someone's strengths. However, before I would test them, I'd always ask the kids, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What would someone else say that you're really good at? And the kids often understood and knew what their strengths were, but maybe they hadn't been told that before, Carlos. So they're like, I'm really good at playing soccer. I'm really good at my hands. I'm really good at telling the teacher what to do. I'm like, awesome. Let's capitalize on that. And so helping kids understand what they're good at and being able to use that to when they're sitting in those IEPs, they're sitting in those meetings where the teacher is talking about, you can't do this, you can't do that, and saying, you know what, I really do good in this. Can you teach this to me in this way? Or this is really hard for me. Can you show me a different way to do it?
Yeah.
That changes everything.
What if a kid said something like, I'm good at playing video games? How would you like take that and help them build off that, and what, like, in a direction? Or does that kind of like, if you're good at video games, is there something that's related to something else they can be good at?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And so people think in education, well, it's about reading and writing and math. Well, if you're great at video games, more than likely you're an amazing visual learner, and you're probably really good with eye-hand coordination and making quick decisions. So that decision making, or what we call code switching, which is where your brain is making constant micro adjustments, can mean so many assets. You can maybe be a pilot when you grow up. You could be a race car driver. You could be great at gaming, at video game design, social media.
Yeah.
All those things are assets.
Yeah, so true. That's a great response. 'Cause when I work with the kids at the foster homes and I go there and stuff, and there's like 6 kids to a home that are waiting to be fostered. They're actually in STRTP homes, so through the state city of LA. But sometimes the only thing, because they give them video games, so like, they go to school, but a lot of these kids are all have all been into trouble, whether they've been into juvie or they got arrested. There's something going on there, and I notice sometimes that, like, some people that work there, and there's great places too, but some places I've been to, it's like they just try to give them things like to distract them, like use this or use that, and not really be hands-on and give them that emotional and that in-person connection. That's what I go in there and do, pull them away from that. So sometimes they say that, like, only thing I could think of is video games. But it's great when you say that, because there's so many different things that you can empower them through that. If you say, like, well, then you could become this because of that. So I think that's so important when working with kids.
I think so too. And I think the other thing is that expectations and the language we use changes you. So when someone expects less of you and gives you less opportunities, sometimes you'll believe that and then you'll match that. And other times you're like, you know what? That's really messed up what they said. That's totally not true. And you're like, I don't believe them. And then you can change where you go because you're not meeting their expectations. You're deciding to choose your own path.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So I want to know more about you, your background, where you come from, what schools you go to, like part of your journey, and, maybe some family life stuff, and how we all can be better, people for our families and stuff like that. So I want to know more about you before we get deeper into your work.
Well, I grew up in a family of educators. I was very lucky because my mom was a teacher, my brother's a teacher, and many families are educators. So I grew up and I always wanted to help people. I don't know, it's just my thing. And so I went to college and I was a psychology major, but I always worked in schools. So I was like, I love this, right? Remember I was talking about earlier that I volunteered, so I really liked it. And I knew I liked psychology. I knew I liked schools, but at the time, the college that I went to, they're like, okay, well, education, you need to be a teacher. And so I thought, okay, this is awesome. So I started my first year teaching, and they gave me a classroom full of boys, 14 boys. I worked in a school district that was very low performing. So all the kids were on free reduced lunch. Many of the kids had never been to formal school. They grew up in Mexico. They had spoke no English. And so they're like, we'll put her in April's class. She's a new teacher, right? Which is really not what you want to do. But I got these kids and I'm like, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And so I started working with these kids. And what I quickly realized is that many of these kids had never been given a chance before. And so they were deliberately put into my class or set up to fail. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? A lot of these kids are really amazing. They just haven't been given the right opportunities. And 2 kids in my first year teaching really impacted me. The first boy spoke no English. And the first 2 weeks of school, he went to the bathroom every day in the middle of the room.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, he's really traumatized. What happened? You know, what's going on with his family life? And his mom came to the class, and through a translator, she said, he's never been to school before. He doesn't know how to speak English. He didn't know where the bathroom was. Mm-hmm. So he was so stressed out that he went to use the restroom because he didn't know how to ask. And he didn't know it was okay to leave the class. He thought he would be in trouble. Talking about changing expectations.
Wow. Yeah.
So my other student was very quiet, never did any work, and just looked at me the entire time. So I met with his mom and I said, something is going on. I want to refer him to get special education testing. I think he might have a learning disability. We get to the meeting and the school psychologist looks at me and is like, April, he's so gifted. He's off the charts. He doesn't need special education. He needs you to teach him differently. You're not challenging him enough. That changed me, and it brought me into the world of school psychology. So I became a school psychologist for about 20 years. I worked in all different kinds of schools right here in LA. Some schools, I worked in Compton and Watts and Beverly Hills.
Completely different parts of the world.
and yet kids are the same, right?
Yeah.
Kids are kids, whether you're in Huntington Park or Pali High
true.
School.
I've heard that. Kids are kids regardless of where they're at, right?
And it drove me, and I went to all these meetings and I assessed kids every day. And here's what I saw is that the system is challenging and the system is a battle in terms of special education, IEPs, and 504s, and that families come to the table unprepared and frustrated and feel like that they aren't informed. And so things get difficult, kids get challenged, and when kids don't succeed, they're put in lower classes. And I didn't like that, and I wanted to do things differently. So I started speaking up and going beyond what I'm supposed to in my job. And that brought me into the world, which is what I am today, a special education advocate, where I enjoy working with schools. I really like working with families, but I really want to work on the system and schools in general so that families can come to these meetings feeling prepared. And more importantly, teachers understand how can we craft educational plans that are easy to understand, and how can we work with all different kinds of learners to build better opportunities for kids, whether they have visible or invisible disabilities.
And what are IEPs and 504? What is that, and what does that mean?
So an IEP stands for an individual education plan, Carlos. Basically, through federal law, something called IDA law, it's a mandated requirement that the schools offer what's called a free, appropriate public education. So basically, it's in essence like a contract or a plan that the team develops based on testing and assessments to say, we're going to offer these supports, these goals, and these services. And along with that, there's a written education plan that the school is obligated to follow. So when children are eligible for special education, they're entitled to all these opportunities. A 504 is very similar, and yet it's a little bit different. It's not as many rules and regulations. So maybe students with ADHD, dyslexia, autism might be eligible. Right. A 504 plan you can get in preschool. You can get it also in college. and it helps with access and equity in education. The challenge with 504s and IEPs, Carlos, is that they're so complex. You walk into these meetings and families are handed 50 and 60 pages and told, sign here, do this. And they feel just everything is confusing and frustrated.
Right.
And they're not really informed of their rights. So they leave the meeting feeling like, okay, the school is recommending this. They're the experts. When in reality, the law is designed to empower families. So when they come to the table, they're part of the decision-making process. They're part of the answer. Right. But the system doesn't really train the families with the right tools to know that.
Yeah. And so how can families learn more about it and understand it more? Because if there's that many kids that fall under that, there's probably a lot of people out there that don't even know the help that they can receive and how to receive it. So like, what would you tell them, like who may not know?
That's a great question. So there's about 8.5 million kids in the United States with 504s, 8 million with IEPs. So
well, it's pretty close. So it's like,
do the math. That's like,
right?
that's like, 15 to 20% of all kids in public education should or do have special education or a 504. So how can families learn more about it? If your child goes to public school, go to the website, the district website, go to your state website and look up what is an IEP, what is a 504. Knowledge is power and education is power. The other thing is, if you're a parent, if you're a student and you have a disability, whether it's invisible or visible, you have rights. So there's no shame in asking your school, can I have a copy of my safeguards? Can you tell me what this means? And that's a lot of the stuff that I do right now on social media is I try to inform and educate because there's so much information out there, but families don't know, oh my gosh, these are what's out there. This is my rights. This is what I have. And I feel like that knowledge is power. And when you have that, it just changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there ever like throughout your time of education, was there ever a kid that kind of just stood out to you more than others, like that you connected with more than others, like in some way? Like I feel that there's like always like people that I've talked to in education, and even myself, there's like one or two, there's a few, because you deal with so many kids, it kind of just you have a stronger bond with. And for you, was there anybody like that?
I had a student that I that I assessed, and I wouldn't say I had a strong bond, but the experience changed me. So the student was in high school, and when I started working at that particular high school, it was a high-performing high school, everyone knew the kid is a bad kid. Everyone knew, they're like, that kid's trouble. That kid's trouble. And I knew him, I'd see him walk the halls every day. We called him a frequent flyer, meaning he was always in the principal's office, being expelled, having challenges. He came to my doorstep as a school psychologist because they tried to expel him and said, we're kicking you out of the district because you tried to hit a teacher. So they pulled me in as a school psychologist. They said, you need to test him and find out what happened. What did I find? I found out that his mom every year had been coming to the school asking for help, saying, my child is struggling. My child has ADHD. Every year she was told, your child is bad. He's just not trying. What I found out when I tested him is he had dyslexia, substantial learning disability, and he had been through so much trauma. And so we got him the education plan he needed. He was able to stay at the school, but it impacted me because I thought for all those years, that child had been asking for help, but people thought, well, he's just not trying. He can't, he won't. That's not a disability, when in actuality, it was. So he impacted me, Carlos, because I thought, how many thousands of other kids will probably end up in prison, end up incarcerated, when actually they needed support and the school failed to give them what they deserved.
Yeah. I know for me in my life, like that was all those things resonate with me the same. Like getting into a lot of trouble when I was younger and everything. I was doing that, I feel now in retrospect, because of like what I was experiencing at home and in the community. I was taking a lot of that energy into the school with me, a lot of those thoughts and, consuming me every day into school. And I just couldn't focus, and I really didn't care too much about school because I had like real world problems already. But I don't ever remember like my mom ever going into the school and advocating for me or anything like that. So let's say there's a kid out there similar, right, that doesn't have a parent or has one parent that just doesn't want to do. It's kind of like, all right, you go to school, it's on them, you're their responsibility now. And he or she may be wondering, like, what can they do to advocate for themselves?
That's a great question. I think meeting with your teacher and saying, I need help. Can you do this for me? Is the first step. And if the teacher doesn't listen, then you go to someone else who does. You go to your school counselor. You go to the school psychologist. And if they don't listen, you go to an administrator. You find those people that you feel comfortable with as a student, and you go to them and say, I need help. What can you tell me about this? What can you tell me about these opportunities so that I can get what I need? I found as a school psychologist and as a teacher, when students would come to me and ask for help, it made all the difference. And yes, there's great teachers out there, and there's also teachers that really miss the mark, just like in life.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that to help you, you just need to find your tribe.
Yeah. There's always going to be somebody that will help you, right? If you advocate for yourself and look for it, you'll find that person.
Yes.
For sure. In every place that I've ever been, there's been not so good people, then there's been really good people, and then there's been like life, changing people that've been within any circle, even prison, school, wherever I've been. That's what I've noticed through life. So yeah, if you're out there and somebody turns you down 1, 2, 3, 4 times, keep pursuing, right? Because nobody's going to fight for you like you at the end of the day.
Yes.
Right. I want to talk about the education to prison pipeline. So I dropped out of middle school. So I never went to high school. And it was like right after that, I was like basically on my way to prison. Went into prison, and luckily later on in life, I got my GED in prison, and then my degree. But it took me to even get my GED. I had to be in there like 10 years first, right? So what are your thoughts and feelings on like the education to prison pipeline in the communities that we live in and all over, the world pretty much? Like what is the connection there? And what do you see as like a way of some sort that we can fix that?
That's a great question. It is absolutely the truth. Most prisons and people that are incarcerated, the statistics are clear. Most of them are neurodiverse in terms of having ADHD and a learning disability. And so if you think about your brain and how your brain operates, people that have ADHD and people that have neurodiversity have these amazing, incredible strengths and sometimes tendency to make poor choices. So in education, how does this play out? Maybe the kid who's the class clown, the kid that doesn't listen. And so unfortunately, the way our education system works is if the child is not doing well, at least in public schools, what do we do? In a high school, if you fail, you repeat the class again. In middle school, if you don't do well, you repeat the grade again. So they lower the expectations for the learner, which makes the student feel not smart, which makes the student generally not want to try. What do? Tardiness, truancy, get with other kids who are similar to them, make bad decisions, and it just goes down this road. And then unfortunately, when kids get incarcerated, they are able to receive special education support. But if you're being held in a prison, it doesn't really help. And you're absolutely right. The opportunities for getting your GED, getting a high school diploma, which is important for life and everything else is less. So the school to prison pipeline is real. Unfortunately, in our marginalized communities, families, parents are busy, they're working, or one mom and she's doing the best that she can, and she doesn't have the same opportunities, and maybe she isn't fully informed at the table. And so it's this system where when kids are not doing well and they're failing, the schools are not designed to support those that are not performing. They kind of, well, they're just not trying. They're just not motivated. And they don't invest in helping all learners. So the school to prison pipeline is real. It needs to be worked on. And when we work with all kids and really do targeted interventions and meet with the entire family and empower them, that's how the system can change.
Yeah. And so one of the things that came to mind was recently there's been like this, in this education that I've been working, there's been this push for like lived experience people working with youth. Like for kind of what we do with my consulting business, is a part of it is that we pair up, the youth with people who've been through their experiences, whether they grew up in the same neighborhood, experienced single parent homes, even went to juvie, prison. So that whole the gang community, drugs, everything. And then those people been there who have went through like their own transformation and have become, certified to do it, mentor them, like come in and mentor them and talk to them and build connections with them with hopes to help them. That's what we do. And do you think that, like, from your perspective, is that an effective method that we should apply more into schools, like having people that have been there go back and help and contribute as well?
Absolutely, yes. So when you were saying all that, Carlos, here's what I was thinking of. Usually in education, a lot of times we rely on test and we rely on data. And so in education, they have these interventions and they're called MTSS, RTI, there's all these acronyms. Basically, the interventions are, how do we support the student? We're going to give them some tests academically. We're going to see if they make progress. That's how we determine what we support. Well, tests are nice, but tests do not determine your motivation. Tests don't look at the human. A real connection, which is exactly what you're saying, is when someone meets with someone else, you talk with them, and then you feel connected because you're like, I relate to them. Memory is based on encoding, and that's based on what is important. So if I were to talk with you about your experience, that would be a great connection. If I were to give you a test, who cares?
Right.
So the way that the education system is designed to determine interventions based on data, that's a system that's based on failure. And I understand we need to determine, how does someone make progress, but progress should be school attendance. It should be not so much grades, but the student is happy. The student is performing to the best of their ability. That determines change. And that's where we should be focusing our interventions, not on giving a reading test or a writing test, because how is that effective? How is that useful?
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I feel that the big thing too is like everybody's always talking about like they hate the education system in LA, especially. I'm always hearing that. It's so much negative talk about it. Definitely more negative than positive. What's your perspective on how the education system is in California, specifically in LA for us? What is your thoughts on it? And what ways can it be better?
It's a great question. I think the education system, at least in California, from working in all different kinds of schools, I think it's very complex. There's a lot of rules and laws and curriculum assigned. In the past 20 years working in schools, what have I seen? I've seen more rules and litigation come into play, making things more difficult and challenging. So I think the truth is that we have to change how we work with families. So what does that translate into? It translates into creating environments that are more inclusive. So when a family walks into the office, they're greeted by someone who gives them better service and says, welcome, you are here, right? And then we want to work on with schools having places where kids are not bused to the different side of the town. They go to their neighborhood community. There's people who are involved in there. It's considered an inviting place. So instead of going through all these regulations and red tape just to show up to your child's classroom, come in. We want you to help us.
Yeah.
So I think education needs to be reformed in terms of empowering the community, empowering the family, and ultimately making the experience of going to school much more of a service-oriented place, which is not really what's happening right now. Right now, it's like, oh, okay, you come to school to learn. It's like, really? You come to school to be part of something. You come to school to find your people.
Yeah.
That's where we need to get back to the basics, is what's important and what matters. And so your education should be the whole child.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we're really struggling in our state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I love that idea. You come to school and you find your community, your people, your lifelong friends, your personal mentors, because teachers can play that role too outside of the classroom. Just like if you're on the playground, or those moments that when you have the opportunity to talk to another adult about something that you may be going through, a deeper thing outside of school, you want to have that. Like teachers also, I'm pretty sure most teachers would be okay with becoming that mentor to the kid, even outside of the classroom, and giving them advice that they may be dealing with to help them get through what they're dealing with at home and stuff like that. I think if you create that, like you said, that'll definitely help and change things for sure. Yeah. What's one of the biggest battles that you're facing right now in your life? And it could be anything: mental, physical, spiritual. We all have them. I'm always interested in what is like the current battle in your life right now.
I think the current battle in my life is figuring out. I've been so happy and blessed to be able to do what I do now, where I'm not working in a school and I can choose how I work with families and work with schools. And so I think the biggest battle for me is when we're sitting at the IEP table and I'm working with families to help them get the support that they need, is helping the schools to see it's not us against them. It's that we're trying to do these things at the table. So we want you to be collaborative. We want you to see this child can achieve, and we're here asking for your support. So the biggest battle I find is that schools get scared when they work with someone like me as an advocate, because they're trained, don't talk to them, don't be inclusive, and it's us against them because we're going to get sued.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking of pitting people and making sides instead of having a flexible mindset to how are we going to make this thing better?
Yeah.
How is the parents an asset at the table? And so reforming that kind of us against them system to we and together, I think it's been my biggest battle, Carlos. And I just continue to want to work on it.
Yeah, it's like it's like sometimes I know I get it, because I know teachers and how they talk about like administrators, and it's like this beef, right? This beef between them, and we're supposed to be working together for the kids. It's supposed to be about the kids. But in so many different schools I've been to, it's not about the kids. It's all this other stuff. And so it's like, how do you ever defeat that? Because it's kind of like it's like human behavior of some sort. Like it's kind of like the in-group, out-group scenario of like, you're gonna have those people that have this belief system, and these people have this belief system, and then people who look at the people who may be on a higher up in a certain way, and everybody's dividing. It's like, how do you fix that in the educational world?
Yeah, that's exactly what I talk about.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that I talk about, Carlos, is having IEP meetings and 504 meetings that are productive. So it's not what we're doing, but it's how we're doing it. So right now, the way the system is designed is that the family walks into the room. Usually they're never given any paperwork. They have those 50 and 60 pages. Yeah. There's about an hour to the meeting if you're lucky. The teacher is pulled out of class for 20 minutes, come and talk about the child. and then they're supposed to write this plan all together.
Yeah.
That system is designed to fail.
Yeah.
So what if we reformed it where the school was like, hey, family, here's what we're thinking of. What do you think? And the parent were to know, oh, I know my child best. I'm going to write up this little letter. So when everyone comes to the table, everyone is like, okay, we've already met. We've already clarified. The parent knows what to ask for. The school knows how to communicate better. And then the meetings are an hour, but it's like a business meeting. And I feel like that in education, we've lost that choice of service, and we've lost the thought of families and students as the consumer. And so that is where really the battle needs to be, is working on that piece.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely playing a role in that, leading the charge of that battle. Seriously. What would you say to a kid who just about to graduate high school and doesn't know what they want to do with their life? What would be like a next step for them?
I would say to them, think about what you enjoy, what brings you, what drives you every day, and what is your passion. And it doesn't matter what it is. And then think about what you want to do to get there. So creating your own vision plan. So maybe in 5 years, this is what you want to do. Okay, what are you going to do tomorrow to do that? What are you going to do the next day? So thinking about what you're good at and then how you want to get there. And even if you don't have family members or other people around you to support you, who's someone you could trust? Who's someone that you could go to that can help to get you to that one space tomorrow? And then every day build on that so you can get where you want to go.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Do you feel like you're living your purpose right now? Like this is your calling, what you're doing? Or do you feel like there's more and there's something else that you want to do in life, related or unrelated to what you do?
That's a great question. I feel like it's my calling because if I think about my choices and my decisions over the past 25 years, they've all kind of led to where I am now and the battles that I fought and the places I've been. But at the same time, Carlos, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
So sometimes those decisions we make, whether they're good decisions or probably could have made better ones, they bring you to where you need to be. So yeah, I'm curious where the next 5 and 10 years will go, but I'm glad that I've been through the journey because the journey has taught me so much.
Yeah. And the things we go through, if we, choose to look at them as lessons and not become victim to them, but help they become things that can help us grow. It's like you completely shift how you approach it every day with your life and how you show up. Because I've seen both sides where people go through stuff and they carry that with them into their future, and then they wonder why people don't want to be around them or don't like them, or they can't find somebody that to connect with. It's because they're carrying all that stuff and not letting it go, or saying that I'm going to take that and I'm going to learn from that and become better. Because a lot of people go through some very tough things in life, experience horrible things, and it's hard for them to find any type of meaning in that. Like they're like I see any meaning in that experience that I had. But there is no matter how bad something is, right? It's always meaning to be found, and there's always some way that you can look at that situation and become better and improve. And that, I feel, is kind of like leads you into what your destiny and calling is. But you have to be able to get through those tough times as well. So I always wonder that. And I know we're never too, I feel like we're never at a point where we really know everything, right? There's always more to learn about ourselves and others in the world. And through that, you can find more avenues to convey and fulfill what's meaningful to you. So, and it's like with the kids, a lot of them tell me that they don't think that, that they want to continue to go to school and they want to drop out and they want to, follow what the people they're seeing on social media. that's telling them to just, drop out of school and do this or do that. But I know one of the biggest things in my life that helped me change was education. Right? It was all, not necessarily math, science, social studies, but it was just having this thirst for learning, this love for learning that I acquired because it helped me develop confidence. So I'm like, I love that feeling of confidence that comes with educating yourself.
Yes.
And so do you feel that kids nowadays, that they need maybe a different message about education? And if so, what would be your message to them on education and being a lifelong learner?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think the message would be that learning and making mistakes is part of life. And a lot of the things in education today are on, we take this test, you perform this. If you don't do well in a test, you're not a good student. Well, that's not the truth. All of the most incredible leaders and anybody that's been an innovator and an inventor, they've made mistakes, and those mistakes taught them to learn more. So let's take a pro athlete, right? The best pro athletes out there are not about getting the perfect score. They're about learning. Okay, I'm going to do this next time. All right, this didn't work for me. This is how I'm going to change myself. Yeah. So for your students and for your adults out there that are struggling in school, I would tell them this, that school is there, and use that opportunity to do what's best for you and what makes you feel good. So if you get an F in something, it doesn't mean you're an F student. It means that way that the teacher was working with you didn't work for you. Yeah. So find what you do well and what you feel confident with, and use that to drive whatever you want to do in life, whether it's education-based or not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's deep. How many kids do you have? 6, right? You're in a blended family.
I have
right?
3. Yeah, I have 3 boys, and my husband has 4. So there's 7 kids.
How is that? How's life with 7 kids? And how did you guys, how was the blending of that? Was it easy, or was it difficult, or just everything kind of came together?
I think having a blended family is a unique situation. I mean, what do you call as difficult? It's I had 3 boys, and I was a single mom for years with 3 boys, and people oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what are you talking about? I loved it. That was great. That was what we lived with, I had 3 boys. You raise boys. So I think when I met my husband, and we started dating, we made a conscious decision to work on blending our family in the way that worked for us. And so for us, that meant introducing kids one by one, not choosing our relationship over the children, but choosing both. Meaning sometimes we spent time together. As I said before, we had different housing arrangements. So we lived in separate homes for several years. And for us, that's what worked for our kids. And so I think for people listening that have blended families or considering having a blended family, there is no right way to have the relationship. The best way to do it is to talk to your significant other and talk to your kids and do what works for you. Everybody has a different way of doing it. And for us, it was living in different homes, introducing the kids one by one, and realizing that it's not about doing things the right way. It's what works for us. Yeah. And so that's what we've been working on. And every day we talk to each other about our day, and every day we start and end together, whether it's in person or virtually. So we can continue to work together.
And by the way, your husband, whether he knows it or not, is I'd consider him a mentor of mine. I know if I were going through something that I can call him and he'd give me real advice, and it's great to have that. And he's a great man. And what are some of the things that you love about him that maybe I don't know? I'm interested in this.
I love about him that one of his big philosophies is yes and. So many people in life, they'll say, but, and he always says, yes and, So
Yep.
his positive outlook, his ability to see the good in others, and his ability to be humble and a great listener,
Mm.
and his ability to be present yet not wanting to be a leader makes him a natural leader.
It's amazing. And one day I'm gonna have him here, and I'm gonna ask him that same question, just so you know, so you guys can share it. But I love that. When we had dinner, as you know, not too long ago, and you mentioned something about you guys communicate every day,
Yes.
text every day.
Yes.
So my biggest battle I would feel right now is relationship, being a good partner, and hopefully eventually becoming a good husband and stuff like that. It's because I just never had the experience. Like I went to prison for most of my life, and before that, all I saw was like women being, abused in some way, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then men talking down about them. So I had to rewire my brain from a whole different, and I'm still working on that to be better every day. And I know there's so many people like me that struggle with that. And so, what are some keys to a good relationship, like a solid relationship?
Those are great. Those are
Yeah.
great questions. I read this great book called Love Languages. It's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
So what it talks about and what really resonated with me is everybody has their language of how they express love. Some people love to be a good service, right? They do things for others, and that's what they gravitate towards, feeling like they're a good service. Other people like having gifts and they like being
Mm-hmm.
able to be given things, and other people just want to be present. So I think in your significant other, finding what they value, whether it's spending time together, getting items, not monetary gifts, but getting things where you feel like you're being given, or just having that one-on-one time. What do they value, Carlos? And then you see, okay, that's what they like. And then you discover, okay, well, this is what I need. And then you work with the other person to determine how can we make that fit?
Yeah.
Because we all know people that it's like the opposite, right? When you're in a relationship, and those are the ones where you're like, this is just not going to work because their language is so different from me in our relationship. So it's discovering yourself, loving yourself, which is a key component, because if you don't love yourself, how can you love someone else? And then also discovering what that other person wants in terms of what makes them feel like they're being fulfilled, and meeting your expectations and also giving to them. So it's a constant, I wouldn't say it's not a battle, it's a constant kind of adjustment and navigation and checking in.
Yeah. As my friend once said, we're never really in balance, we're balancing. You know what I mean? It's like he beautifully described it as like if you see a skier from a distance, it's just in harmony. It's beautiful. It's just sequence. But if you're up close, it's a lot of little movements. And it's like that's the difference between like the balancing and balance, right? And so I love that because constantly like people search for balance, but in some way you'll always be balancing. It's never just going to be solid, right? So it's like trying to balance the relationship by always understanding what the love language is, understanding the other person, and knowing that we're all growing and developing daily, and which way are you growing may not be the way I'm growing, or are we growing together? So always a constant thing. So yeah, that's a great advice. So before we end, I want to give you opportunity to share where people can connect with you, can follow you, can subscribe to what you're doing, to reach out to you to get services and help, the things you talked about here today. And then I'll ask you, after that, I'm going to ask you 2 quick rapid fire questions, random stuff. That's what I do. And then I would love for you to just one closing message to parents out there that, may need some help, like a message to them on like what they should do, like an immediate step. So first, share everything about you and where people can find you.
Sure. So if people want to come and join RISE, come to riseeducationaladvocacy.com. If families are interested in working with me as their advocate, come to the website and go to /contact. You can follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Rise Ed Advocacy. And we'd love for families, teachers, anybody who's interested on changing the system and making things better to join us.
Great. Okay. Favorite book?
Mindset. Carol Dweck, Mindset. It's one of my favorites.
Definitely everybody read that book. It's one of those you have to read books, right? A favorite place to eat? Favorite restaurant?
That's a real
It's
tough
funny.
one.
It's funny.
That's a real tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the day. It depends on what I'm having, what I'm drinking. I got to come back to you on that one, Carlos. Like, I don't know if I can answer that one.
I love it. That's why I love rapid fire questions. Because it's like you never know what you're going to ask. Like, it's funny. I've asked people crazy things. And it's like, because it's like we know so much about like so many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to make a decision on favorite food, though. Favorite place to eat. Because it could be depending on the situation. But I like to challenge people. So let me know, and then I'll add it into the show notes for anybody out there that's interested. Later on, it'll be in their favorite place to eat, so that you can try it too. Okay, one last message to the camera, that camera over there, to a person that will be watching this. A message to them, and it could be any message. I know I said to a parent, but I thought about it, and I feel whatever's calling to you, as far as who you want that message to be for, it could be for anybody.
I think my message to anybody listening is that if you feel like you have a disability or you have one, is that it's not about you're less than, but that what tools do you need to be successful? So my message is, whether you're a caregiver, a teacher, or a parent, it's about what can you do to change things in a positive way. So starting out each day, whether it's going to school or being a teacher or being a mom, it's like, what am I going to do today to make things better? And life is all about choices, and life is all about, remember we talked about walking down the hallway, and the opportunities are there. You just have to make a decision to change yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for listening all the way to the end of the episode. I wanted to just give a quick shout out to the sponsors for this podcast, in terms of like them allowing us to use their space at Legendary Foods, at the Legendary Studios. I want to give a shout out to them for that. They're an amazing product. Also, I want to say that if you're interested in a free PDF version of my book, Warrior in the Garden, 7 Rules for Men, there'll be a link in the description that you can click to get that, as well as to sign up for our weekly newsletter. And I'm always giving new advice and new guidance to help you get through life's challenges, and always keeping you up to date on the new things that we're doing at How to Battle and my company. And so I just want to say thank you for being here and listening, and please remember to subscribe.